Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by John Boy Media. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. Justin, we got a good amount to get into today with John Marin, the Dave Gettleman pressers. It seems like Jason Garrett's returning, and we know for a fact Patrick Graham's returning because he just loves the culture of the New York Football Giants. Justin, how you doing, man?
Bobby Skinner doing well. Almost Friday. We're on like a little bit of a different recording schedule now. We're recording on a Wednesday night. It's going to be the off season. We're only going to release episode 2 times a week, unless news breaks. Then then if we have to go more than 2 times a week, we'll do that. I just want to thank everybody for listening because it's a rough day yesterday, but thanks for listening to Talking Giants and thanks for talking Giants with us. So, Bobby Skinner, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Well, not as wonderful because it's Jason Garrett news, but we'll talk through it. We'll get through it as a podcast. And as always, we'll look at the positives and move forward. We're not gonna spend the whole offseason crying about a decision we don't like. But
Well, I'll tell you what. We had some soy boys, sour boys, John Merritt, Dave Gettleman talk about 2018 today. I mean, what are they doing? Why are they still bringing up 2018?
we'll,
That was sarcasm.
I know. We'll get into it. Before we get into it, this episode was brought to you by four people. Chris Goosh. His name is Goodch. He's from England, so I'm assuming that's an English name.
Spell that last name again for me.
Goodch. It's like Goosh.
It's almost like the offensive line coach.
Coach Gooch. That's how it's really spelled. We got Robbie Ruggiero. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. We got Eric Flanagan, and then Jason Epstein, who's he has some relatives that we don't judge by people by who they're related
no
to. So
relation.
Jason, we love you, Jason. Even though you're related to some people, we love
no
you.
relation.
You don't know that. Oh, speaking of which, remember how we had a guy named Panicola? And I was like, oh, that was our baseball coach in high school's name. He messaged me. He's like, who did your uncle coach for? I was like, I have an uncle who's who did he coach for? I have an uncle who coaches baseball in Florida. And I was like, well, he coached at these two schools. He's like, that's my uncle, which is small world. And I got notice on Monday. I mean, this podcast is growing. Justin, who are all these people that are related to some not so great people?
Bobby, you are a naturalancestry.com. I mean, that's what's happening here. Those wonderful people, our Patreon is an interconnected family. You can join this interconnected family by going to patreon.com/talkinggiants. $2 a month, live stream. You get to hang out with us while we record the episodes. You can win some shirts. I'm even wearing a Talking Giants shirt right now, a red Talking Giants shirt, and some other fun perks. So patreon.com/talkinggiants. Thank you. We love you, patrons.
Sorry, I was literally writing down a note I got from Buddy Brown in the chat that reminded me of something I want to put. All right, let's talk about John Marin, Dave Gettleman talking to the press. We'll start with Marin because he's the owner. He's the one we hear from the least, and he talked first, Justin. And there's a few things to go through. I think the biggest thing is, one, his decision to bring back Dave Gettleman. And Justin, he enforced this point, and he said it over and over again. Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge work together, and they have a good working relationship. Those guys work together. They are, they aren't making decisions with that. One's not making decisions without the other. Those two work together. And that, to me, is the reason why John Marin brought back Dave Gettleman, because the team, there's definitely some good growth this year. But at the end of the day, they only won 6 games. I thought that was the saving grace for Dave Gettleman. It's like, we've had 1 year of Joe Judge, and it went well. Like, the 2020 offseason went well. We're hoping that the 2021 offseason goes really well. We thought 2019 went pretty well. 2018, they admitted some they didn't admit what mistakes, but they said that there was miscalculations, which we'll talk about. So I think that is what came down to bringing back Dave Gettleman for 2020. And we were asked about it a lot in the voicemail episodes during the season, and I kind of agree with that. Like, with Joe Judge, the Dave Gettleman GM era worked well. It just did. Like, there's even as big as haters can't deny that.
Yeah, the looming black cloud, and we're going to get to this. The looming black cloud is the offense, and we could talk more about the offense even with Dave Gettleman. We'll have more of a big picture conversation. But he did mention a couple times the working relationship between Gettleman and Judge, and overall, no matter how much I cringe about the offense, what I consider the overall working relationship of Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman somewhat of a success in 2020, only looking at 2020. Yes. Yes, I would. Now, I don't know, and I'm still not convinced that Joe Judge has as much say as people like to think. I always think that there's part of John Mara and Dave Gettleman that always does consider what the head coach has to say. I just have a feeling that Joe Judge is a bit of a more better presence, and he's a little bit louder, and he may be probably a lot more well prepared than Pat Shermer and Ben McAdoo was. That's that's the reality of that situation. But still, because even though Joe Judge seems like he can be more prepared and he can present information, he may be a better talent evaluator than those guys. Doesn't mean that I think Joe Judge is, maybe second in command to Dave Gettleman, like a lot of people like to think. Oh, if Joe Judge says that Dave Gettleman is his guy, then Dave Gettleman should stay. And if not, Dave Gettleman shouldn't. Dave Gettleman staying means that Joe Judge likes Dave Gettleman. I don't know if that's the case because
I think I can draw. I feel like I can draw that conclusion that Joe Judge likes working with Dave Gettleman.
Well, I'm not saying that he doesn't like him, but I'm talking about how much power, and we're talking specifically about John Mara's presser, how much power John Mara has given Joe Judge. That is still very unclear. And in my opinion, and this is my opinion, we're not reporters, I don't have inside information. Just because John Mara came out and said that they have a good working relationship and they make decisions together does not mean that the power structure in the New York Giants organization of the coach's coach, the GM makes the personnel decisions, and the owner middles and all of it, I don't think that has changed.
But I mean, we thought, I don't, I think some people give like all of 2020 credit to Joe Judge. Like, that's not what I'm saying. And then they'll say, well, all 2018 was John Mara, which we'll talk about too. Like, Joe Judge definitely has input, and Dave Gettleman has showed that with his coaches in the past. I mean, look at the Arizona guys we brought in. Think about, a theme of free agency this year was like, hey, it was guys they knew, whether it was, Blake and Fackrell with Patrick Graham, bringing in Patriots guys or guys from Miami. It's like, it seemed like it was the coaches had input on the players that they brought in.
Yeah, I mean, but we've seen ex-Arizona signings with Betcher. You didn't really see a lot of former Shermer signings, but you saw a ton of ex-Betcher signings. So I'm not gonna solely just
There's a lot of times Minnesota didn't let anybody go.
We talk about it with Joe Judge because it worked. That's why we talk about it. So that
was the first year think about like the reason we didn't see a lot of Pat Shermer ones is because nobody from that Pat Shermer offense left Minnesota besides Mike Remmers.
Correct.
Mike Remmers was the only guy that left, and we picked him up.
Mike Remmers was I think he was a Ben McAdoo signing anyway.
No, he was Shermer. He came in for Shermer year 2.
I thought it was 2017. Oh no, you're right.
You're thinking of somebody else.
Yeah, I may be thinking of somebody else, but I don't think you can confirm, or we can't confirm or deny anything. I'm just saying what I think and what I feel. What else do I want to bring
You're thinking of Red Ellison, who was the McAdoo guy.
Yes.
So I mean, but the thing is, he repeated that he made an emphasis that like we like the way that him and Joe.
All right, but let me ask you a question. Now, this is what I wanted to bring up. That's why I was stuttering before. I do think that there is tension between Jason Garrett and Joe Judge. Don't you also agree with that?
I don't think Joe Judge. I don't know. I don't think the Jason Garrett book is completely closed as far like right now. It seems like he's coming back, but if he wasn't coming back, they wouldn't come out and say like, oh, like they wouldn't come out and say that he wasn't. I don't know what to think of Jason Garrett, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Joe Judge is head over heels for Jason Garrett.
Yeah. I also think the fact that they brought up 2018 so much leaves Will Hernandez's future in doubt. We talked about that last episode too. I think it definitely leaves Will Hernandez's future in doubt because they really did bring up 2018 while John Mara in the same breath said that he wants Saquon Barkley to be a Giant for a long time. And they also defended Eli Manning. So what is there left that is substantially that they could have planned to, change or make up from 2018? There's Nate Solder, obviously, which depending
Alec
on what he
Ogletree,
decides.
Patrick O'Malley. I mean, there's more than 2018 is more than Saquon, which I know, me and you
No,
kind of
I'm
disagree a little bit.
talking about guys who are left on the team. That's what I'm talking about. Guys who are left on the, like, why now would the Giants come out and say that there were mistakes made in 2018 when there are still guys on the team, when last year there were still plenty of guys also left on the team. Including the free agents, some of the free agent signings, Alec Ogletree, the trade. Nate Solder was a starter. Why not come out and say that 2018 was a mistake last year when everybody knew it was a mistake versus this year? Like,
They kind of
what
did
is the
though.
point?
They did. They said we made like he said, like I thought you can win while rebuilding. I was wrong. So they did admit mistakes from 2018. This year they made more of an emphasis of that, where they are both like it seemed like they're
But why?
towing that.
My
towing that
question is
line.
why? My question is why? Why come out and
Because it's
say it
year 3
now?
and they've won 15 games, and they have to be like, hey, the reason why that we think we're going the right way, but also winning 6 games in the third year is because we screwed up 2018.
I think it could say more for if Nate Solder decides to come back and
Nate
they
Solder's not
can.
coming back for the Giants.
But if he does, Bobby, I would not want to decline $20 million if I was a football player, and I still had any motivation to play the game. I would not want to decline that money. Like, I will make that football. Like, you made your bed, you lie in it now. You signed me to this contract and you backloaded it. So now I want to be paid. I would not hate him for that.
but the Giants would cut him.
Correct. That's the point. So that's why I think it's saving face for that move. And this is me. This is my opinion. Like, what? Like, I'm trying to think why strategically bring up 2018 specifically, and if they want to move on from Will Hernandez because he basically was benched after he got COVID.
I think it's as simple. Like, I don't think now Will Hernandez's future may be in doubt, but I don't think like Will Hernandez has been talking. And we talk about the 2018 draft. I mean, Saquon was hurt all year, and we'll talk about the offense and Saquon. Like I know where you stand on Saquon, but there's no doubt that Saquon makes the offense better, and I think we win more games with Saquon. I don't think it turns the offense into like a much better offense, but I do think we win more games with Saquon. Lorenzo Carter, 3rd round pick, hurt, and Lorenzo Carter was having a good year. Will Hernandez was this full-time starter, and then COVID. That Will Hernandez, let's view it as a negative, and then BJ Hill, in the 3rd round. He's a good player, but he just doesn't get to play, which is kind of frustrating. And then Kyle Aletta, I mean, I hate drafting quarterbacks in the late rounds. And RJ McIntosh for a 5th round to me is a success. You're a 5th rounder and you're on the roster the 4th year. I feel like that's a success, even if he's not even playing. So I really do think it is like, hey, the reason they bring up 2018 is one, because there were mistakes made. They're being honest. And some of them are very loud, Alec Ogletree, Nate Solder, Patrick O'Malley, trying to work it out with Eric Flowers, I think that's their reasoning for saying like, hey, yes, we have won 6 games in the 3rd year with this regime, but we still think it's going in the right direction.
Right. Because 2018 doesn't count, which is also it's a problem that they did basically say, oh, this 1 year doesn't count because we made mistakes.
I was talking with I was talking with our friend Talking Giants Vigilante about it, and he's like, I think Dave Gettleman did in 3 years what he should have done in 2. And I think them bringing him back, but I think it's just them giving him a clean slate. They're not judging him as a whole. Like, hey, from here on, from 2019 on is what we're judging you on, and we like what you did in 2019 and 2020. That's what we're judging you on, because we're starting fresh. And it's it's not like it's like, okay, did you hit this grade? It's like, that's not the way it works. It's not like, did you hit this amount of wins? If yes, you can stay. If no, you're fired. I think it's more of like, hey, we screwed this up, but we believe that you can right it.
It's very much anti what I feel like this Giants franchise once stood for. I think they did stand for no nonsense. Dave Gettleman says that he stands for no nonsense. And by the way, I'm not saying I want him fired. Bobby and I, we both agree that, Jason Garrett is the biggest obstacle for Giants wins and losses next year. He was the biggest obstacle in terms of winning and losing games this year. He's going to be the biggest obstacle for winning and losing games next year, in my opinion. The Giants can bring in some very, very good talent this offseason, even if they don't get top-fledged talent, which I know a lot of people expect, Devonta Smith, who just won a Heisman, and people also expect Kenny Galladay or Allen Robinson. I'm not expecting the Giants doing that, because then you look at other teams in cap-friendly situations, like any team in Florida or any state that does not have any state income tax, they automatically have an advantage for those top-tier free agents. So then the other teams need to be smart and methodical with their moves. So I'm not saying that, but especially John Mayer's press conference, I did not have a single problem with what Dave Gettleman said. Dave Gettleman, if anything, made me hysterically laugh my ass off more than anything. But there is a very anti-giant wave vibe that is being presented out of this organization right now. It is not no nonsense. It is not we're gonna come in here, we're gonna kick ass. It is not we are going to do everything that we possibly can do to win football games. It is crossing our fingers, hoping and praying that things do turn around, even though entire years of mistakes were made, hoping and praying things can just miraculously turn around. And if they don't, oh well, we're just.
I don't think that's what
guy.
it is. I think they like what he did in two out of the 3 years, and those just happen to be the most recent 2 of the 3. Like it's like I know it's like we kind of just say like, hey, Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge did a really good job with 2020, but they did. Like, he built the top 10 defense. And
is there a 2019 free agent that's on the team right now?
Well, the 2019 was mostly draft picks, but there was trades for Zeitler, Peppers, which those are 2 big pieces. Free agency. Let's see, Remmers is not on the team. Running back, wide receiver, Golden Tate is
Golden was good. Oh well, Golden Tate is arguably Dave Gettleman's worst move, because it also prevented Sterling Shepard from doing something that he's done very well.
I don't think a guy who was productive for a year and then not. And
but
then
it prevents Sterling Shepard. It prevents a very good football player in Sterling Shepard. How good is Sterling Shepard been?
I don't think it's his worst move. It's a bad move, but it's not his worst move.
I think it's arguably his worst move, because not only did you pay. Because not only did you pay $20 million in 2 years, he signed up for 4 years. Not only did you pay $20 million for a player that didn't belong on the team, but you prevented one of your best players from performing in a spot where he could be very good and provide a lot of value.
Okay, but they were cap strong in 2019.
Cap is flexible. You can work around the cap every year. Apparently,
they worked around it to get to 2020.
They also worked around it to sign Nate Solder for the largest contract
that was in 2018
in NFL history.
That was in 2018.
I'm saying that they were in a worse cap spot in 2018.
No, they weren't. They were able to go out and sign guys like him and O'Malley. I mean, 2019 they were cap strong because of moving on from the.
Everybody on Twitter says the Giants. Everybody on Twitter says the Giants were in cap hell in 2018.
Maybe like going forward, 2019 they could not spend a lot of money. 2019 was when they used a ton of draft picks, where they went out and got their quarterback. They got Dexter Lawrence, who we think is really good. DeAndre Baker, that's like in the middle where it's like DeAndre Baker was supposed to be a key part of this defense this year. It's not like he just busted out. You get O'Shane Ximines, who got hurt this year. You got Darius Slayton out of that draft. So, I mean, 2019, I don't view it's not out of the park, but I view 2019 offseason as a positive.
It's a combination of draft and free agency, and the only offseason where Dave Gettleman has actually put together.
But who do they whiff on in 2019 free agency?
The only offseason which Dave Gettleman has put continual continuity moves together that actually resulted in a good product on the football field was in 2020, and we were in year 3. And the reason why the Giants were not in the playoffs is because it took him 3 years to have a full offseason of continuity moves that fit together.
2019 was rookies though. They who did they whiff on?
I'm talking about continuity. That also includes free agency.
But they didn't go out and get free agents in 2019.
Yes, they did. They signed Golden Tate to a 4-year, $40 million,
2-year, $20 million contract.
But you trade away Odell Beckham Jr. to sign a 31-year-old slot wide receiver when you very much could have signed somebody cheaper, which we did go through some other options, and also they could have drafted. There were other options to fill wide receiver rather than trading away the best wide receiver in the world at the time and then signing a washed up slot wide receiver.
Traded a guy that was on the decline for Peppers, who's a huge part of this
No,
defense, for Dexter Lawrence, which is a huge part of this defense, and Kevin
I
Zeitler,
very
who,
much
has been a solid offensive lineman for 2 years, and we're trying to keep on for the third year. We don't know what their decision is. So yeah, they didn't bring in free agencies, but they brought guys in through trades. He let Landon walk, which was a good move. Like, I don't like 2019, the easy route for him would have had to not pick the QB, which I guess you go back and forth on that. Would have been to keep Odell and sign Landon. That's what would have made the fan base happy, and all of those would have been bad. Like that, those would have been keeping Landon and keeping Odell would have been two bad decisions.
I'm not saying that. I never said keep Odell. I never said keep Landon.
But that's my defense of 2019 of why I like 2019. Right. I don't think it's out of the park, but I view it as a positive. So okay. That's why I think I think it's less crossing their fingers. Like, I don't think it's just them hoping. I think they like, hey, these are the things we like that Dave's done. We think we can continue to replicate the good things.
Yeah, it's just it's unfortunate that it's not resulting in winning football, where now we are approaching year 4, where there's more of a hope that it does turn around instead of substantial signs, in my opinion, that a 10-win season is coming.
I don't think it's built on total hope. I mean, we
because you're just hoping that you can get better talent in here, and then also this is where Jason Garrett comes in, and you just hope that Jason, these out of this world talented players can work in a scheme that is not designed for anybody to excel.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with Jason Garrett, but I don't think it's just like, oh, hope it gets better. Like, I think we both view it as going in the right direction with the players they have and the players they're going to add. Like, yeah, they have to add players. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do every offseason. That's what they did in 2020 and why they, the defense went from 30th to 9th.
The Giants went 8-8 in 2013, 2 years after winning a Super Bowl, and John Mara spoke with very strong words about the direction of the team and was talking about how he was not happy with the direction of the team after they went 8-8 2 years after winning the Super Bowl.
2 years after winning a Super Bowl, not 2 years after going 3-13.
Yeah, but I'm saying how now it has been years of losing, and we are not speaking with the same emphasis of turning things around.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no emphasis.
It's different. It's different though. It's not the same team. We're dealing with a young QB that they hope grows. And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But like, a lot of it is hinged on him. And I agree, Jason Garrett. Like, if they keep Jason Garrett around, then I'm right there with you. Then it's like, well, what are you hoping for? I agree with you on Garrett. So maybe we're agreeing and we don't realize it. Let's finish off the John Mara though. So we talked about how I think it's a clean slate. He did do the off-season excuse for the offense, which is bull crap. I mean, that's just a garbage excuse. It was a record year for offense. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Jason Garrett as a whole towards the end. The other thing is something we've talked about. He flat out said there was no mandate for keeping Eli. Now, I get you could come back and say that you don't get the job unless you say, unless you say you're going to keep Eli, but that doesn't matter. Like, he said, you can't. He said, I'm not taking any blame for that. He said it's nonsense. So, for people who said that, like, hey, Dave went into 2018 thinking they could win, and I was one of them. I wasn't doing this as intense, but I was one of them. You can't put that on John Mara, because he basically said, I refuse to take any blame for that. That's nonsense.
Yeah, that was a theme throughout the whole presser, where he basically did say, I am not going to take any blame for middling in anything. So does that mean that everybody who believes that John Mara is involved in football operations, does that mean that you're wrong? No. But this is, and again, this is also my point on why we should hold Dave Gettleman more accountable. But does that mean that Dave Gettleman should be held more accountable? Or let me even say this. Does this mean that Dave Gettleman is absolved from everything just because I still think that John Mara is involved? Because unless he does sit there and he says that he is involved, then he is ultimately, Dave Gettleman will ultimately be the sacrificial lamb in that case of John Mara's own problems and John Mara's own nonsense. because we are forced to believe as fans who do not have insider information, who are not in the building, we are forced to believe, oh, if you are not going to take responsibility for middling and football decisions, we are forced to believe football people are making the football decisions.
Yeah, we're right there with you, and we can't. We a lot of people get on us for like assuming things. Well, you can't assume things either with that. You
Yeah.
can't assume that was a Eli mandate. You can make inferences. Like I do think that him saying that he wanted to go forward with Eli, probably gave him a better shot over anybody that said they didn't, even though they didn't really interview a bunch of people. So I bet there's a good chance everybody in the freaking interview process said they go forward with Eli.
Besides Louis Riddick, because he was the only one outside the building.
Yeah, well, and that and thank God we didn't end up with Louis Riddick. So
yeah.
Anything else on Merritt before we move to Gettleman and other stuff?
No. I was glad to hear. I was glad to hear that Mara disagreed with some decisions that the football people have made. I think he even referenced that in his presser too. He's like, there are even things that I don't agree with that Dave and Joe do all the time. So I was glad to hear that. That means like, oh wow, John Mara can disagree with something and not have not override it. Wow, what a concept. So maybe I am a little bit more of a Mara fan than I let on. I don't know because I don't know. Yeah, I have nothing. I haven't really despite our 20-minute conversation, Bobby. I wasn't really mad or anything with the pressers. I'm more or less just I'm not happy with the state of the team. Losing sucks.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think there is a standard for this is that next year, where you said like they're hoping and stuff, if they don't win next year, he's gone. There's like we didn't go in, nobody went into this year. I mean, what were the expectations for this team this year with Dave Gettleman back? We were like maybe 7-9. And if everything doesn't drop a ball versus Philly,
yeah,
we are literally 7-9. Like
yeah.
Nobody was like, this team better go 9-7, 10-6 this year.
Yeah, my problem with saying
where the offenses and the defense being kind of swapping roles a little bit.
I'm officially at a point where every year we're going to finish off a year saying, if only this happened, if only that happened, if only the kicker hit this field goal to win the game, right? If only this guy caught the ball, if only this defensive player held on to this one sack, right? I feel like every year we're going to have a moment or two of those. I'm kind of overused. I mean,
let's get rid of it. Say going into the year, the team goes 6-10. Are you like, oh my gosh, they underachieved?
No.
So, and the defense overachieved, the offense underachieved, which we'll talk about later.
No,
all right,
but
let's
there
take
is
a break.
nuance. There is nuance to it because the offense was. This is an offensive league, and they were second worst in points scored, and then that would be damning. So there is that.
Yeah, I agree with you. If Dave Gettleman was the one who's saying like, no, we need to bring back Jason Garrett, then I'm right there with you. Where it's like, well, what's the point? So, and maybe Garrett's not coming back. I just saw Chad Forbes say it's a 1% chance. I don't know how reliable it is, but he did say it. So maybe it happens. All right, let's take a break and then we'll talk about Gettleman's presser, since we basically just talked about Gettleman's tenure. So let's take a break. Playoffs? Want to talk about playoffs? Yes, that's right. It's right, okay? Football playoffs start this weekend, and there is no better place to get in all of the action than with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. If you haven't checked out the app yet, there is no better time to sign up and start cashing in. To celebrate the most exciting time of the football season, DraftKings is giving you the chance to double your money. All it takes is for one touchdown to be scored during Saturday's football games. That's right. Once you opt in and place your bet, all you have to do is sit back and wait for a touchdown. While we're all excited for football, let's not forget the 2021 basketball season's kicked off. So head to the app now to check out all DraftKings daily odds boosts. Emmanuel, quickly. Knicks fans are in love with them. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Make it easy
quickly.
For you to deposit. Quickly. I'm not doing this ad quickly because you need to listen up. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Unlike DeAndre Jordan, make it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. These ads are starting to get a little wacky. We're a couple wacky guys. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code JOHNBOY when you sign up to have a shot at doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in one of Saturday's football games. The code JOHNBOY for new players to get a shot at doubling their money for a limited time, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania. Only restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
It was a rough ad read.
Oh,
It's been a while
you
since you've done
shut
it.
up. It was a great ad read.
It's rough.
It was a great ad read. Rate the ad read, Patreon chat. That was a great ad read. I thought it was
F's
good.
in the chat. F's in the
I thought it
chat.
was good. But if you do have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's talk about Dave Gettleman. You know, according to Justin, we're just gambling away, just hoping, gambling away for Dave Gettleman. This ad's never going to end.
Hysterical press conference.
Maybe should we just make the whole second half of the podcast an end? Let's talk about some real stuff, and then we'll talk about your minute and a half compilation of Dave Gettleman lines. We basically talked mostly about it. One thing they made clear is they're going to add offensive playmakers, whether that's in free agency, the draft, or both. They basically made it clear we are going to add offensive playmakers, which, I mean, I don't think you had to listen to this press conference to think that they would probably do that, but it's nice of them to basically promise us that.
Yes. Unlike what John Mara had to say, and unlike some of the feelings that it came from, some of the feelings that I got from listening to that, I was 100% fine with what Dave Gettleman had to say. There's not really, I know Bobby has some notes and I'll react to it, but there's not really any specific notes that I have. But Dave Gettleman is a hysterical person. The fact
Let's just play
that I need to explain the context first. The fact that he is a hysterical person saved, in my opinion, the disastrous feelings that I had from John Mara. Like, it saved it. Like, I was mad after John Mara was like, we're bad. But then Dave Gettleman comes and he's hilarious. And you can very much, this is a real take. You can very much sense the difference in Dave Gettleman from this year versus last year, where last year it was very much clear that his job was in jeopardy and John Mara had enough of him. He's like, you are on your last straw. Where this year, the vibe of Dave Gettleman was different. So I collected a total of 17 drops, 17 sound bites from this press conference because Dave Gettleman is a hilarious human being.
All right, let's play them. Some of them are pretty good. Like, I have them some saved for future reference.
Good morning, everybody. Jerry Mead, Kevin Abrams, and of course, Ronnie Bonds.
That the lessons learned the last couple of years have put you guys in a position to succeed.
Well, I'll tell you this.
And what was your reaction to his reaction to what went down in Philly on the last night of the year?
Well, Mark, how you doing, kid?
That is him calling people kid. I saved that. Like, how you doing, kid? Like, that's what makes Dave Gettleman. He's like, what's going on, kid? Like,
just being patronizing. That's what really told me that it's like, okay, your job is safe, and you know your job is safe because now you're back to being patronizing again.
Yep. Last year he was hat in hand, like, I'm so sorry. I was cocky. This year, he wasn't like strutting around like he has in past times, but he definitely felt a lot more comfortable this year. All right, let's get back into it.
He starts at A and gets to Z.
Stats.
How long do you want to stick around for?
Well, it really is dependent upon the Lord how long I stick around for. We're all day to day, by the way.
That's a great lifeline right there. That's a great lifeline right there. Like, we're all day to day, if you think about that. That was a good one. Like, I'm going to use it. Like if people like Dave Gettleman, we could turn that into a shirt. The issue is the problem is most people don't like him.
Capitalize the L in Lord.
Think about it that way.
The drop that it's going to take, how far, for everybody. I don't care if you're a football GM or you're a carpenter or whatever. It takes a mental load on you. It puts a mental load on you.
New York Post. Hey, Dave. You got me?
I got you, Paul. I'm here.
Good.
I hear you.
Done with him last year rather than giving him the franchise tag, because certainly seems like the price went up this year.
So Ryan, it doesn't make a difference. You're killing me either way.
Ryan Dunleavy just makes people laugh.
You know what I'm
He went on for a good while
saying?
there.
So Leonard did a great job. Did a great job of working his fanny off. Obviously, they got to come soon. The idea is to win.
Oh, last year we didn't know he'd come that fast, and then this time, obviously, they got to come.
Played offensive center before, and we drafted. We had Will. We got Sean Lemieux. They're big. They're young. They're strong, and they're tough, and they're smart.
I need to save that one. Sean Lemieux was pretty good. I'm like, Sean Lemieux.
They're big, they're strong, they're tough, and they're smart.
I get to save that one. I have 3 of those I saved. The ones I have saved to like reply to tweets and stuff are.
How you doing, kid? He starts at A and gets to Z.
He starts at A. You're better at the accent than me. You're
not
much
according
better at the
to
accent
Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman, the Twitter account, rated my accent 6.5 out of 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to study every single one of those 16 drops. I may pick maybe 10 of my favorite. And I think I want to now create a video where I'm impersonating Dave Gettleman. We can have a side-by-side battle. It will be half the screen Dave Gettleman, half the screen me. And it will be take Dave Gettleman, take me, take Dave Gettleman, take me.
That'd be a good Twitter video. That'd be a good Twitter video on YouTube. You're like,
no, on everything.
Oh yeah,
everything.
You know what? Let's do it. You should do it.
Everything.
I will say, the one thing that's good about keeping Gettleman back is I love the Dave Gettleman Twitter account. I think he's fantastic.
I agree.
I remember him when he had like 100 followers. I was kind of the same thing. Here's the last thing I have on Gettleman, and I guess this can turn into talking about Patrick Graham a little bit. And maybe we could finish off with Jason Garrett. We'll finish off with negativity. We're glad Patrick Graham is back, like really glad. And I think it does speak. I know the word culture gets overused, but I think it does speak to the culture of this New York Giants team and what Joe Judge is doing. The fact that Patrick Graham decided he wasn't even going to do interviews. Like, there's no harm in doing interviews. And you would have to think that he has a goal of being a head coach one day. And doing the interviews, there's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of times it's, hey, year one, you do the interviews. The next year is when you get your real shot. So him not taking interviews and signing with us, I feel like that does say a lot about what Joe Judge is doing here. You know what I mean? Like, I really do think he is the assistant head coach. Like, I know, remember last offseason, it's like, if Joe Judge gets COVID, Jason Garrett could be the head coach. That's why it's such a good signing when Patrick Graham was the assistant head coach. But I do think, like stepbrothers, like Joe Judge and Patrick Graham are shake and bake. Like, they.
No, you cannot tell me that you just got that reference wrong. You're done. You're kicked off this show.
How did I get it wrong?
You got shake and bake.
Oh, not Step Brothers, Ricky Bobby and Cal Naughton Jr.
The
same thing. You act like I mixed that up with Walking of the Dead. Like, Step Brothers and Ricky Bobby are very close.
Apples and oranges, Bobby Skinner. Wow.
Shake and bake.
I don't know if I can continue the show.
You gotta shake it, and then you bake it.
I think we need to play that 1.5-minute clip again for me to get happy.
The Magic Man. That means Patrick Graham.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you because really, it would be nice to build something that good sustainable franchises have. I mean, how long have we been talking about the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator possibly being a head coach? He's been there. How long has Josh McDaniels been rumored to get a second opportunity, whether he deserves that or not in a lot of people's eyes? I know, Bobby, you have your opinions on Josh McDaniels, but how long was Matt Patricia defense coordinator in New England? And he, word on the street is that he should have been a head coach a long time ago, even though that didn't work out. My whole point is that continuity within a franchise with coaches that do a good job is the important part of that sentence. Continuity with coaches that do a good job on your staff is important. And even with your position coaches too. We thought that some of these guys may move on to college, or maybe,
we'll see. It's maybe still very early.
It's early, but because
Well, they won't move to college, but they could move to other NFL gigs.
Right. But as of right now, that doesn't seem to happen, and that's important, and that's good. At least we would hear maybe rumors of certain guys getting interviews, but we're also waiting for certain coaching staffs to fill out. So I guess it is a little too early to tell. But continuity is a good thing with coaches that are good.
Yeah, and this is something we kind of said, but I want to make an emphasis since we are talking about Dave Gettleman on this episode. Is Dave Gettleman built this defense. Like, Patrick Graham has done a great job with the pieces, but a lot of our expectations were just not kind of believing these players. Like, I know he gets a lot of crap for the, run the ball, stop the run take, but the stop the run take is real, and it's a good thing. It doesn't mean that your whole defense is placated around stopping the run, and we talked about this midseason. It means that you can have defensive linemen not stop the run, and you put your linebackers back in coverage, which they did this year, where you don't have to blitz like crazy to stop the run or bring an extra guy in the box. And the fact that, like, this team lost all of their edge players this year. All of them. The second half of the season, they didn't have Lorenzo Carter, O'Shane Zimenez. Marcus Golden was traded when we were 1-7, and then Kyler Fackrell missed basically the whole second half of the season. Like, they were missing their edge players. And I think that, like, those guys aren't going to light it up, but this was a very, like, Patriot way of, like, hey, we're not going to spend $20 million on Jadeveon Clowney or Yannick Ngakoue or whatever. So I think he built a really good defense. And you know what? James Bradbury, he turned out amazing as a top 3 corner. Blake Martinez, like, I like Blake. I wasn't big on the signing, but I like Blake. He exceeded our expectations. And our defensive linemen stopped the run so that our other players can play the pass. And you know what? It's working. We had a top 10 defense this year. We had a top 10 defense, top 9. They're the 9th ranked defense. And they were able to stop the run with their defensive linemen and let their linebackers pass. Like, I haven't seen a team that doesn't bite on play action like the New York Giants. Now, big part of that is coaching, but another part of that is, like, we don't need our linebackers to flow like crazy to stop the run because we do have the run stoppers up front. So I do want to give Gettleman some credit for this defense. It's not simply Patrick Graham just being a total wizard.
Yeah, you want to credit the front end. I want to credit the back end because I've even said this in 2019. We're with having Baker and sticking with Janoris Jenkins, even when we did that, and when that secondary looked entirely different from the one that we had this year. But Dave Gettleman prioritizing secondary pieces with drafting McKinney in the second round, and you can argue, I guess trading for Leonard Williams, that cost you a 3rd round and a 5th round pick. You took Dexter Lawrence in the 1st round. But even look at the edge. There has not been a lot of assets that have gone to the edge position versus the assets that have gone to the secondary. What, Julian Love, was he a 3rd round pick? 4th round pick?
4th round.
4th round pick. Darnay Holmes, 3rd round pick. Xavier McKinney, 2nd round pick. Jabril Peppers costed you a good player in Odell Beckham Jr., but good. We like that trade. Logan Ryan is now extended, and he's hopefully going to be here for the next 3 years. James Bradbury costed you a little bit of a pretty penny in free agency as well. He's not a cheap player, but we look at that contract now and we love it. So I don't think Dave Gettleman is an idiot in regards to positional value on the defensive side of the ball. I don't. If he was an idiot, I think he would draft Josh Allen in 2019, plus went out and signed Jadeveon Clowney for a big contract. If he was an idiot, I think he would have done that, but he's not. And he actually invested in the back end. He invested in good secondary players. Obviously, having Patrick Graham helps. So really all around. Bobby told you about the front end and how the front end helps the back end. And just having a good secondary in today's NFL, when quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds, sometimes on average, you're not judging how you're getting to the quarterback. You're judging how you're covering, because guys it's impossible for guys to get to the quarterback in 2.5 seconds. I think the quickest Giants sack this year was by Austin Johnson, and it was 2.6 seconds against the Rams. It might have been quicker than that. Might have been like 2.4, but that was the quickest sack the Giants had this year. And there are some quarterbacks in the NFL who average getting rid of the ball in 2.4 seconds. So good for Dave Gettleman doing and covering his ass on the back end with this defense, because it really helped you.
Yeah, and when we talk about, like, the need for an edge, that to me, like, when I say this defense needs an edge, it needs an edge to be an elite defense. Like right now, I
Yeah.
view it as a really good. I think it needs a good edge player to become an elite defense. Either that, or you add another really good cornerback too, and then you're like, all right, we can have average players on the edge. Or down the stretch they had below average because of injuries, but injuries happen to every team, so you can't fully use that either. Um, even though it was weird, like going into the season with outside linebackers, like, do we need all these guys? And at the end of the season, it's like Nico Lelos getting reps. So kind of Jabal Sheard, like he is our number one edge player. Let's finish off talking about Jason Garrett. Let's just assume he's back. Let's at the moment, let's just assume he's back because there's been nothing to indicate that he's not back. Although I hope all the other coaching spots get filled and the Chargers are stuck with him. Everyone knows how we feel about Jason Garrett. I do not think he's a good offensive coordinator. I don't think he will ever give this offense an edge. It went from the 19th ranked offense to the 31st ranked offense. Now I agree, Saquon out, but I don't think Saquon going out is the reason an offense that we had a lot of hope for the potential went to the 31st ranked offense. We're not going to go in and out of the schemes, but it is a very passive offense. It's a very passive offense, Justin. And I go into the past, even like last year when Kellen Moore was the OC for Dallas. You think about the way what was the Cowboys' issue? Like they could beat up on the bad teams because they had all world talent. Like think about all the talent the Dallas Cowboys did. Last year they had a top-notch O-line. Dak's a really good player, really good wide receivers. A top 5 running back in Zeke. They had all world talent and a pretty talented defense on the back end. But against playoff teams, Justin, they went 1-6. Against non-playoff teams, they went 7-2. And Dak Prescott's numbers in those games are what's alarming. Is Dak Prescott, who we think is a good QB against playoff teams, against non-playoff teams, 66.8% of his passes, 309 yards per game, 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 7-2, 34 points per game. That's crazy. And they have good players, so they should be putting up those type of points. You're not going to average 34 for a season, but those are great numbers. Against playoff teams, they went 1-6. The completion percentage drops down by 3.8 to 63. The yards per game is the same. 8 touchdowns and 8 interceptions and 18.3 points per game. That really talented Dallas offense averaged 18 points per game, went 1-6 against playoff teams, and is the reason why they missed the playoffs with a Super Bowl roster. The 2019 Dallas Cowboys had a Super Bowl roster, and they missed the playoffs. And I get, Kellen Moore, but I think Kellen Moore is better than Garrett. So I think that, that speaks more to it. What they did with Daniel Jones and turning into the 31st ranked offense stinks. So we talk about does adding Saquon help? Absolutely. Wayne Gallman, we didn't have any of those explosive plays from the run game. There's one versus Seattle, and that was it. And they didn't even score. Saquon has done that consistently. So yes, we didn't have any big screen plays from the running back. Saquon against Pittsburgh, I think he had 2 in that game. So yes, there's big plays that Saquon makes happen that the running backs currently in the roster don't happen. So that does help. Does having getting good wide receivers in this offseason, will that help? Yes, absolutely. Will the young O-line getting better help? Yes, absolutely. But here's my thing. He will never be, or will having continuity help it from this year to next? Yes, it will. I don't think we should lay, you go to sleep on is, we're just building continuity. Yes. So do I expect the 2021 offense to be better than 2020? Absolutely. Even with Jason Garrett, I expect it to be better because there should be better players. Younger players should get better, and continuity does help, but continuity is not a reason to keep somebody. But Jason Garrett is never going to be an advantage for the New York Giants. He's never going to be. So I think anytime we're outmatched talented or at the same mark talented with a defense, they will win that battle because Jason Garrett does not give us an edge. Okay. He, worse than the second down run rate. He doesn't use motion worth anything. He doesn't attack the ball downfield, which is the strengths of Daniel Jones. He doesn't put the check down in the middle of the field, which is the strength of Daniel Jones. He does not fit what we're trying to do. And I don't think he fits what a lot of teams would probably be trying to do with a young QB. It just puts a damper on 2021 for me if Jason Garrett is back, man. Because I just don't I don't believe in it. Now, if he totally changes, will I be like, hey, I was wrong, and I will celebrate it. Absolutely. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh well, technically, and like I think, for example, with Gettleman, like if he's doing good now, I'm not gonna bring up 2018. Like, so if they do good next year, I'm not gonna be like, yeah, well, he sucked in 2020. I'm not gonna do that. But everything points to it not working. Everything points to it not working, and I don't think we're gonna have the talent to overcome Jason Garrett.
Yeah, I agree. And the hope that we had heading into this year is that he would evolve. He was a play caller back, I think, from 2007 to 2011 in Dallas. That is when he was calling every single play. And those teams were very, very ultra talented. A lot of years, Dallas had a very talented roster. Arguably, they weren't their most talented until 2014, where they went 14-2 with DeMarco Murray and Tony Romo. Tony Romo barely had to even throw the ball, but he was still considered for MVP just because of how efficient he was. That was insane. And even
Offensive
that Dallas
coordinator
team
Tony
couldn't.
Romo.
Yeah, really. Well, let's get Tony Romo. How funny would that be? Tony Romo calling Giants plays. Unless he evolves, right? And unless Joe Judge is going to force him to evolve, similar to how I hit the microphone. Similar to how Freddie Kitchens called plays against Cleveland. And we did see a changing of philosophy and a changing of the game plan post Cleveland Browns game with Colt McCoy, by the way. We saw a little bit of a change in plans in terms of attacking it downfield a little bit more, which tells me that was Joe Judge stepping in saying, look at this, and look at the results.
And he did step in,
even though
in the beginning of the season with the run game. Like that's something
Yes.
where I'm technically guessing, but he stepped in. The run game changed, and it wasn't simply guys blocking better. They were doing more pulling, more trapping. Where the first 4 games of the season, it was strictly inside zone, outside zone. They weren't even blocking the backside. They weren't. It was like a high school running game, and it changed. And I was actually looking at some stuff the Patriots did, some of the stuff Chad O'Shea did with Miami last year, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the stuff. This is the stuff. That's right around the time he's probably started talking to Coach Gooch, who's probably putting a little bit of that in his ear. So listen, this is a guess, but I do think the run game going from historically bad to pretty good had a lot to do with Joe Judge, because he didn't, Jason Garrett didn't just wake up and be like, I'm going to change my entire running offense.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I've told this stat before. And if you're talking Giants diehard listener, you know this stat like the back of your hand, because it's alarming. Before week 5, the first 4 weeks of the season, Giants running backs were being tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage on 30% of their rushing attempts. That's bad. That's 3 out of every 10 rushing attempts. Yes, it was, that was 3 out of every 10 rushing attempts, and you're not running the ball every play. So maybe you run the ball 1 out of every 3 plays, right? So think of how high that rate is of whenever you attempt to rush the ball, that it's just a negative play and you don't go anywhere. And we can infer based off of evidence that it was Joe Judge was the one to kind of step in and change things for Jason Garrett. Now, the hope for continuity is that there actually will be an offseason this year. Hopefully they will be able to be in person. Hopefully they will be able to do the self-scouting process. And this is something that Joe Judge did talk about during his kind of exit press conference. The self-scouting that is necessary. He gets to do that with Jason Garrett this year. So that's the hope. And that this kind of brings me back to my point that I had the first show. We're just hoping that he
moron,
we're hoping that he evolves. We're hoping that the offense can evolve, which is crazy that, Jason Garrett has been in the league for so long and we are still begging for him to evolve. But that is where the Giants are.
Yeah, man. It's just, it doesn't inspire any type of hope. Where, you're talking about Gettleman, it's like at least 2020. It's like we can recreate that. Like there's a lot of hope for this team with Jason Garrett. He's giving you no, and that's what pissed me off about John Mara using that bull crap. Like, there was no preseason, the COVID. That pissed me off. That was a horrible excuse. There was a record amount of points scored in the NFL this year. A record amount. We got worse. Everybody else had to deal with stuff. There was some good teams that changed coaching staffs that had really good offenses. Look at the Cleveland Browns, for example. And you can even look at the numbers. Games 1 through 8, the Giants scored 131 points. Games 9 through 16, they scored 135 because John Mara said it got better in the second half. It didn't. As a half a point per game. We can say, well, they did miss Jones for 2 games. Okay, so in the first 8 games, 16.25 per game. With Jones in the 6 games he was playing, 18.5. Well, he was banged up against Arizona, 20.8 points per game, which would have put them at 27th in the NFL. And that's picking the best games from the offense this year. That is not acceptable. And that's Jones playing some damn near perfect games. Like the Philly game was perfect. They scored the highest amount of points this offense scored was 27 twice. The first game against Dallas, against an extremely undisciplined defense that was horrible at the time. I mean, it still was a bad defense in week 17, but in week 5, I mean, it was horrid. It was horrendous. And then Philly, where Daniel Jones, I don't say this lightly, played perfect in that game. I mean, they took advantage of every downfield shot. They converted on every single one. He was audibling at the line, out of stuff. The offensive line played well. The running game worked well. Daniel Jones was perfect in that game, and they scored 27 points. You can't.
And they barely won.
Yeah. You can't live on that. You can't expect your QB to be perfect. And even Dan Orlovsky, who is like not a, he's not a Daniel Jones like defender. I mean, he's kind of was a hater at sometimes. He's like, in the Giants offense, you have to be like, your QB has to be perfect for it to work well. He's like, they never make it easy for him. You've talked about it with the yak numbers. This offense, and maybe it turns around in 2021 with Jason Garrett, maybe. But when you're looking at 2020, it was a total failure. And every excuse for it, to me, is a garbage excuse. No one's saying that this offense was supposed to be a top 10 offense. I get the players aren't great. It's not supposed to be a top 10 offense. But to go from a QB's first year to his second year and go from 19th to 31st, you got to give me more than the Saquon injury for an explanation for that. Jason Garrett's offense sucked in 2020, and it was because of his schemes, his mindset, the way he attacks the defense. It was bad. Okay, so there's nothing that Jason Garrett did in 2020 inspires hope. The only hope for 2021 is that hopefully Joe Judge just totally changes it, which I don't think if that's the case, just bring in a new OC, or if you really don't want to change the whole system, just make Freddie Kitchen the OC.
Yeah, I agree. Good for Zach Rosenblatt for being the first guy to bring it up to Mara, and then I think it kind of inspired a little bit of a flurry of questions from some other people on the beat, even with Gettleman. So good for credit Zach Rosenblatt, friend of the program, because they weren't asking about it, by the way.
No, they weren't.
They were asking about the Eagles. They were asking about the Eagles, and there was one other thing that
they're trying to get headlines. They're not trying to find out info.
Talking about, I will never. I mean, I guess I didn't go to school for this, so I don't know.
John Mara says offense isn't good, isn't like, and I think I will give beat reporters credit. I agree with what you're saying. I will give them credit. I think sometimes they're like, I'm not going to waste my question on something they're not going to answer.
I mean, Bobby, every week we would talk, every podcast we would talk about how disappointing the offense is. That was every single week. There, even in games where they were good, it was still like, well, it still wasn't great, and it still was barely enough to win this game. So I'm not frustrated with it. It's just frustrating that we don't know, and
hey, maybe we'll put this episode out and he'll be fired.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know about fired. I think it's clear he's not going to get fired at this point. It's going to have to be that he's moved on.
Mutually part ways could be something.
Giants love to use PR language to make the relationships with other people that they disrespect a lot better. Cough, cough, Tom Coughlin.
Yeah. I mean, I get that too. Even though Tom Coughlin I wish we could have had this podcast on the day Tom Coughlin just totally just didn't shake John Mayer's hand at that press conference.
Oh, I would have loved it. I would have been
pissed. Now we're really opening up a can of worms. It pisses me off so much that they fired Tom Coughlin. Like, here you go, everybody in the organization, just step up one spot. Like, that was.
Yep.
Oh my God, that was so frustrating.
Dave Gettleman.
I thought we were getting Sean Payton.
Dave Gettleman's the type of guy that when he's going to get fired, he's going to shake John Mayer's hand and he's going to thank him. Tom Coughlin's the competitor that when he gets fired, but it's not actually called that he's getting fired, he's the competitor that's just going to walk by and say, "Screw you."
I love
And
Tom.
I love that.
I love Tom. I love Tom. All right, we appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week. The tentative schedule is Tuesday, Friday, but if any big news breaks, we'll probably hit you on Monday. And hey, if Jason Garrett gets fired on Thursday, we'll be back tomorrow. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us for this beginning of this offseason journey. We'll see you next time. Until then, let's go Big Blue.